LENDR network, what we're aiming to do and what we've created is synthetic real-world asset tokenization. And I'll get into more detail on exactly what that is later in this presentation. But essentially, it is a new method of tokenization that allows us to have higher yield, lower fees, and global access without the need for KYC. A brief introduction about myself. Like I said, my name is Nathaji Metivier. I'm the CEO and lead developer of LENDR network. I have been involved in crypto for over 11 years and have a background in cybersecurity. I worked in that space for around half a decade. And around 3 years ago, I became a DeFi founder within this space, starting a DeFi lending software as a service company. And with that company, we reached some pretty key milestones listed here at the bottom, like achieving over $12 million in TVL, raising more than $1.4 million in past IDOs, and donating over $135,000 to charity. Ultimately, we decided to close that company down due to concerns about regulation and the SEC. But we took everything that we learned about crypto and about US regulation, and we put all of that into LENDR network. So before I get into it, I kind of want to tell a small story about something that we experienced firsthand at our past company, which is a major pain point within Web3. And that is that if you are a company that's holding a lot of assets on chain, it's very difficult to diversify. So when we went to do this with our previous company, what we found is that our options were volatile crypto assets, stablecoins that were affected by inflation, or if we wanted to diversify properly, we had to go through these series of steps in order to do so. And what that looked like was converting to a major token like Ethereum, paying fees to do that, moving that token to a centralized exchange, converting that into cash, which required you to pay fees again. And then you would move the cash into a bank account. That would take 3 days. You would move it into a brokerage account. That would take another 3 days. And then finally, after all of that, you could purchase an ETF or index fund or something of that nature. And if you wanted to get back into crypto, you had to do all of those steps in reverse. So it's a pretty terrible process for Web3 companies to diversify within Web3. And that process is actually unavailable to some players as well, because if you don't have access to a bank account, a brokerage account, and an exchange account, you actually just can't diversify into many asset classes. So that is a major issue that we're aiming to solve with LENDR network, and that is that there is very little and almost no RWA diversification within Web3. It's a few asset classes just beginning to be added, like treasuries, real estate, and things of that nature. But if you compare it to traditional finance, a majority of the asset classes that are available there are still unavailable within Web3. As you guys already know, especially from this presentation, there are other protocols aiming to resolve this problem, but we've seen some major issues with some of the other protocols that we've seen. Not the other ones from this presentation, but some of the other ones. And the first issue that we see pretty common or pretty often is low accessibility. So most of these protocols exclude the US market completely due to an inability to navigate the regulatory environment. And that seems like a pretty big missed business opportunity to us because the US market is the largest financial market in the world. In addition to that, the other major issue that we see is poor asset coverage. So most of these protocols will only target a single asset class. And this has led to most assets being unavailable. And the reason they do that is because they usually need to find custodial partners to work with, right? So if you are a real estate tokenization company, you may need a third-party company that holds real estate. And if you also wanted to add in another asset class like energy, then you need another custodian to hold your energy stocks or something of that nature. So you end up with pretty poor asset coverage by most of the competing protocols. Taking a quick look at the market opportunity for this problem that we're aiming to solve, you guys are probably already aware of this, but the RWA token market is now slated to reach over $10 trillion by 2030. And to put that into context, all of crypto is currently worth less than $2 trillion. So this would be at least a 5x increase on the size of the entire crypto market. So there's obviously a pretty major issue to solve here and quite a bit of demand that's growing every day. So our solution to this problem is to create RWA index tokens. These are essentially tokens that function exactly like index funds or ETFs, but just in the form of an ERC20 token. And we want this to be the simplest way for people to diversify within Web3. So we want it to be as simple as just swapping to a token the same way you would swap to a stablecoin or something of that nature, and to immediately have exposure to any RWA market that you want. These tokens are also usable in any existing DeFi protocol. And a benefit of that is that you can achieve higher yield than you would get in Web2. So in Web2, you might hold a stock, maybe take out a loan against it, but that's really all you could do. And with this new technology, you can use these tokens within any DeFi protocol to earn yield on top of the exposure to that specific market. Our specific piece of innovation is that we are doing synthetic tokenization. What this essentially is What this essentially means is that we are backing all of our RWA tokens using only on-chain collateral. So this is the same exact method that has been used by decentralized stablecoins for years, but we've adopted it to be usable for any RWA market. And the benefits of this are that we can achieve full decentralization. And with that, we actually can get global access without the need for KYC by using a legal structure that's very similar to other protocols like Uniswap. In addition to that, because all of the assets are on-chain, we also don't need any custodians, so there are no custodial fees or risks. And then finally, we also get the benefit of protocol profit sharing with all of our users. So if you put all of this together, what you ultimately end up with is higher yield, lower fees, and global access without the need for KYC. So quickly taking a look at what the new process to diversify would look like for a Web3 or DeFi company, you simply swap to an RWA token. And if you want to get back into crypto, you would just swap back anytime. And like I said, this is globally accessible, so anybody in the world could do this as long as they have a wallet. Quickly taking a look at the different types of tokens that we can create. So we can essentially create, using the synthetic tokenization method, RWA tokens for anything that we can get an oracle for. But we wanted to approach this in an intelligent way. So we looked at the largest ETF markets in the United States, and we essentially decided to tackle them by size. So we want to bring any untapped markets that are currently popular in ETFs into Web3. And the top three are technology, healthcare, and energy. And so those are the first three sectors that we really want to dive into, starting with an electric vehicle index and then an AI and robotics index. And getting to the end here, I'd just like to talk about our insight and key difference. So what we've really built this company around is this idea and realization that just like with stablecoins and exchanges, you have successful decentralized players and centralized players. And we believe the exact same thing is going to happen within the RWA sector as well. And when we looked into things, we realized that pretty much every other RWA company is going for this centralized approach, and that the decentralized market is largely untapped. So LENDR aims to enter that space and really be the leading provider of fully decentralized RWA tokens. And with that, we hope to accomplish the vision of making every RWA sector globally accessible through Web3. In order to do that, we would have to become something like a Vanguard or BlackRock of Web3, or if you're a DeFi native person, something like a MakerDAO or Uniswap of RWAs. So that's really our vision for LENDR. And with that, more than happy to open things up for questions.
Right on time. Thank you so much for this power pitch. I have one question coming up from myself. So how do you aim to incentivize users to engage with LENDR network?
Absolutely. So in one of the later slides, we talk about some of our go-to-market strategy, which I will quickly jump over to. And essentially, we've built in early adopter incentives for both people providing collateral and also for people who are providing liquidity as well for trading. And ultimately, what we want to do, though, is really aim to lock in a lot of DeFi integration. So we're already partnered with Chainlink, and they can connect us with a lot of DeFi protocols where we want to get our token listed. And essentially, what we want to do is go to where these users are already engaging with DeFi using stablecoins and basically just make RWAs available as an alternative to those, right? So we want to go to where your users already are and incentivize them essentially to use our token, at least to give it a try, and realize that instead of losing money to inflation, you can diversify and gain exposure to these different markets, gain some yield on top of the DeFi practices that you're already doing. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. We have one more question coming up from Kevin Rickoy from Solana Foundation. So with regards to tackling US and global presence without KYC or custodians, how are you approaching regulatory jurisdictions and asset markets that do require licensed custodians?
Absolutely. So the benefit of the synthetic approach is really that we don't actually need to hold any of the asset classes that our tokens represent. I'll talk about the US market specifically because that's the one that I'm most familiar with. There are some additional benefits here of this synthetic method, and that is that with full decentralization, you essentially can sidestep a lot of the SEC's required regulations because they've stated that if something is sufficiently decentralized, then it wouldn't qualify as a security. So using this method, and the recommendations made by the Crypto Rating Council on how to avoid a lot of these regulatory compliance issues, along with a unique legal structure, which is the same thing that's used by companies like Uniswap, that's only available to fully decentralized protocols. We're able, honestly, to sidestep a lot of the regulation and enter these markets earlier on. Eventually, I think that centralized players will also enter those spaces once regulation kind of moves along, but that could take years. So that's essentially the short and sweet version of how we're tackling a lot of this.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for elaborating. We're also out of time. So, Nataji, I want to thank you for being with us today. You're a remarkable pitcher, and looking forward to see you develop further.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. And if you guys have any questions after this, more than happy to answer them in private.
You heard it, folks. I will definitely send the judges through, and wishing you a great day. Goodbye, Nataji.
Thank you.